So good afternoon, my name's Emma. I'm the Widening Access Officer for Aspire Higher at the University of Hertfordshire, and I'm joined by my colleagues. You can see Charlotte and Colleen on the screen there.
Hello.
So they are from universities. So we've got Oxford Brookes and Bedfordshire University as well, sort of joining us. We're working with Aspire Higher and Study Higher to bring this session to you today. So I've already mentioned the session's being recorded, so if you don't want to be sort of shown on screen, we're happy for you to keep your camera off, but likewise, if you want to pose any questions yourself, feel free to kind of maybe raise your hand or let us know that you want to pose a question. We're happy for you to unmute and kind of ask Ahmar directly. So it's great to have so many parents and kind of students that have signed up, as well as teachers and advisors to this session. As a result, we decided to make it sort of more of an open forum for a chat, sort of a Q&A. So if you have any questions or sort of key messages that you want to hear about student finance, feel free to ask Ahmar this afternoon. He's also got a presentation that's specifically for teachers and advisors that I will send out to those of you who sort of work in the higher education and sort of education professions this afternoon, with more policy information, and we're going to run a particular specific policy-based student finance session in February as well for teachers and advisors. So as I said, if you have any questions this afternoon, feel free to put them in the chat and type them if you don't want to sort of speak, but if you do, feel free to kind of just raise your hand. There is a raise your hand you, and the idea is hopefully it's just going to be sort of informal, relaxed opportunity to kind of ask questions, get them answered. And another thing to point out is that we have kind of a comment page for evaluation. So if you've got any just general thoughts you wanted to give us about the session today, anything you liked or anything that was useful, or any feedback, please do put comments on there. We'll put a link in the chat. And we'll also put a link to sort of a longer evaluation form, but either of those, either it's just a quick comment or evaluation form, really helps us to kind of plan these sessions. And we sort of do take that feedback on board and always look at it when we do new ones, so it is really useful to get that. So I think that's all of my introduction done. So we had a couple of questions I think come through beforehand, some of which Ahmar has written out some really nice detailed answers to, and I'll send that out as a document to everyone afterwards. But there's also some that I think Ahmar was going to go through sort of in person this afternoon. So I thought maybe if we start with kind of some of those questions and answers, and then we could open it up to kind of audience questions and answers. So I'll hand over to Ahmar.
Thank you very much, Emma. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you here all this afternoon, or I should actually say this evening, because we're getting the dark nights quite early now, aren't we? So yeah, as Emma has said, I was kindly sent through quite a few questions ahead of this afternoon session, and I've provided some comprehensive answers for that. So that document will be made available to everybody that's attending today, and it will be emailed out through the contacts list that we actually have. There were a couple of questions on that list that was sent to me that I highlighted as information that I prefer to go over this evening, if that's okay. And you'll have to forgive me because I've written them down separately here on a piece of paper next to me just to remind me. My grey hair gives it away that I'm getting a little bit older now and my memory isn't what it used to be. So one of the questions that was asked was about interest rates and how that works with regards to student loans. And it's a good question because it's something that comes up quite a lot. It's something that gets asked quite a lot through my email inbox, and especially when we do teacher and advisor sessions and parent sessions like this. So quite simply put, so interest is applied from the moment that the student loan is actually provided to the student who attends higher education. And the way that works is that the interest rate is based on the RPI. So that's the retail price index, and that is set by the government, not by the student loans company. The government sets that in March every academic year, and it is applied from the September of that year. So at the moment, the RPI is 2.6%, and the interest rate on the student loan, both the tuition fee and the maintenance loan, is 3%. So combined, you're looking at 5.6% of interest being applied to a student loan during someone's study until they actually enter repayment. And you don't enter repayment until the April after you have completed your studies, i.e. you're graduating from university or college, or you have left your course, i.e. you have withdrawn and decided not to continue. So during your study until you enter repayment, it works out at 5.6%. And if you, oh, hello, Okay, I'll carry on. We have an early student finance applicant. That's great to see. So where somebody has entered into the labour market and is working, the interest works slightly differently. So if they are under the threshold of repayment, and the threshold is the amount that somebody is allowed to earn before they enter repayment, it is RPI only at that point in time. So if we were to use now as an example, it would just be 2.6%. The threshold then changes. So if somebody is earning between the threshold and upwards of £49,000, we then look at, and let me just get this absolutely correct, we then look at RPI plus up to 3%. So depending on what their earning threshold is, determines what the interest is. So you can see it fluctuates based on what their circumstances are, whether they're earning or they're still in education. And I hope that answers that question with regards to interest. There was another question that was asked, and I wanted to, again, comment on it as a very high level briefly this evening. It was really around the policy for EU and European Economic Area students for 2021. Again, I think 80% of my time at the moment in my questions in my inbox at work is being taken up by this very topic. What I will tell you is that the government hasn't finalized the policy for EU, European Economic Area individuals. We're hoping that will be finalized either by the end of December or at least early in the new year. But what I can tell you, and a discussion that I've had endless amounts of times with different practitioners, and in fact, Emma and I were just having this discussion before we went live, is that I think what's important to remember here is that EU and European Economic Area citizens wishing to remain in the UK have to go through the EU settlement scheme. That is first and foremost paramount. If you have been living here for a number of years, whether it's 5, whether it's 3, whether it's 10, the Home Office provision now, because of Brexit, requires that you actually go through the EU settlement scheme. And you have to have been living in the UK before the 31st of December 2020, which is the end of the transition period. And you have until June 2021 to apply for your lawful status to remain in this country. Once that status is awarded, that determines whether you are eligible for student finance. And the simplest way to look at this is the status will either be settled if you've been here for 5 years or more, which entitles you to full Student Finance England support, or if you've been here for less than 5 years, you will receive what's known as pre-settled status, and for that you are guaranteed tuition fee support, but not necessarily maintenance loan support. So as I said, the easiest way to really look at this and reflect on this isn't, can I apply for student finance and then I apply for the EU settlement scheme? It is an immigration-based policy based on Brexit that every EU citizen living in this country at the moment, wishing to remain here, has to go through the EU settlement scheme. Once you have that status and you make your application for higher education, you are then determined as either a settled status or a pre-settled status. So I think it's important that we remember that. Another question that came up was, I think it was one of the last questions, what paperwork is required to be filled in if I'm applying for higher education, student finance support, and I need childcare support? Well, you'll be pleased to know that last year we changed the provision and the process for childcare support. So when you apply for your core support, now the core support is tuition fee and maintenance loan. It is all now one application and one assessment that is carried out through that core support based on your household income. That will trigger if you have listed children of nursery age or childcare age or full-time education under the age of 15 or 17 if they've been special needs statemented. That will trigger what's known as the childcare grant form for you. We will carry out an assessment, identify your entitlement for childcare grant support, and you will receive a notification of entitlement award for the amount of childcare support, whether you have 1 child or 2 or more children. So it's all now triggered through the one PN1 core finance application form. We've done away with separate application forms, which was quite a laborious process many years ago and up until 2019 and 20. It's a process that has improved the actual experience for students, but I would say more so for university and college frontline practitioners who endlessly had to print off reams of paper just to get that application completed. So again, it all now exists within one application. I was also asked a question, which obviously we can't answer. Should I carry a credit card when I'm a student? We're not financial advisors. That's a personal choice. When people go to university or college, or even in real life, as it may happen, if you choose to keep a credit card, that's your personal choice. That's something you need to look into, discuss with your parents, discuss with bank managers, bank advisors, your university. It's not something that we can get involved in or even wish to get involved in and talk about whether students should be holding and carrying credit cards whilst they're in study. I'm afraid I can't answer any more than that with regards to that question. I think that covers off some of the questions that I'd highlighted that I wish to cover this evening. And Colleen is the first to put her hand up. So Colleen, please unmute yourself and let's talk.
Sorry, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to remind people that they can put questions in the chat. So I didn't have one myself just yet, but I will in a minute. But also when you're not asking a question, if people could mute their mic, because then it makes the recording clearer for those who aren't able to attend and will be sent the recording afterwards. Thank you so much.
That's brilliant, Colleen. Thank you very much for that. I honestly thought you had a question for me then. I'm going to leave my mic on because if nobody's asking any questions, I've often been told I have the careers advisor's curse of talking and never knowing when to be quiet. So I do apologize for that. But I'm happy to have an open discussion and share opinions, views, experiences of people who are currently supporting young people or family or friends going through to higher education or further education, what their own experiences of the student finance process has actually been, or even the full higher education process. Colleen's hand has gone up again, so we'll ask a question.
Sorry, yes. I thought that it might be useful, especially for those that are parents and students that are attending. I know one of the questions, the pre-event question was, what is the current tuition fees, and also maybe explain a bit about the maintenance loan and how that's means tested.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Colleen. So everyone, you'll be pleased to know that the tuition fee for approved higher education providers, that's government institutions that have a teaching excellence framework in place and an office for fair access agreement in place, an APP as it's now known. The tuition fees are capped at £9,250, and that's been the case last year and the last 4 years. So the government has frozen tuition fees for approved higher education providers. With regards to maintenance loan, because I'm not talking through a slide and I can't read each rate as it is, I have put that down in my little diary next to me. So for those students wishing to go to higher education and decide to stay at home, the maintenance loan rate for 2021 will be up to £7,987. Now that rate is determined by household income. So if you are living at home with your parents and your parents wish to support your financial application form to determine how much of that maintenance loan you are entitled to, we will require their household income. That is that they create their own online account through the Gov website, declare their household income based on the previous tax year. So all students starting in 21-22, we require the full tax year income evidence of 19-20, not 20 and 2021. It will be for the academic year, the full tax year of 2019 and 20. Once you have provided us that household income, we determine how much of that maintenance loan based on your household income you are entitled to. If your household income is below £25,000, you get the full maintenance loan. So if you're staying at home, that's just shy of £8,000. The elsewhere rate is £9,488. And for those of you brave enough to try London, it's £12,382 maintenance loan. And these are per year figures, but we don't provide that maintenance loan in one lump sum. In my day, my grey hair, it was provided in one lump sum. But what Student Loans Company has done for many years is split that into 3 installments. So we write to you once we have notified you of your application that it has been processed and approved. we will identify on a table in a letter that says you will get your first installment late September, early October, once you have started your course and your university or college has clicked on an electronic process that you have attended your course and your university, basically that you have enrolled. So we release that payment electronically into your bank account. So again, importantly, students must have their own bank account. We cannot pay it into a parent's account, a boyfriend's account, a girlfriend's account, or the Golden Fish account, whatever it might be. It must be your own account because you are taking out that student support for studying in higher education. Then we release the second payment after Christmas. And again, once your university or college confirms that you have returned for your studies. And then the final installment is usually after the Easter period. So that's how the maintenance loan works. The household income is determined by taxable earned and taxable unearned income. Now, for a household that may not be taxable earning or taxable unearned and maybe on benefits, we don't answer questions specifically around benefits because I'm not a benefits advisor. You will need to speak to the Department for Work and Pensions for that. But what I can tell you is that if you are receiving benefits, we still need to see income evidence of taxable benefits and non-taxable benefits list. And the Department for Work and Pensions will give you a full list of what those are. I hope that answers that question for you, Colleen.
Yes, thank you. And I can see in the chat, we've got Giovanna, who has asked the question. She said, good afternoon. Will the portals open at the same time next year for the 2021 application cycle?
Giovanna, brilliant question. And I wish I had the answer to that question. If I literally, and I know this is cliche, had £1 for every time somebody asked that, my student loan would have been paid off a long time ago. I'm kidding. So we've not received confirmation from the government when they're going to open that cycle. I think they might be preoccupied with a little thing called Brexit, given they've only got a few more days left to negotiate that deal for us. We are hoping it is usually around that mid to late February time. And I wish I had that date for you. But as soon as we receive confirmation of the release date for that portal, we publicize it. We email all of our higher education contacts. It goes live on the Gov website. It's available through all social media channels of Student Loans Company and Student Finance England, Student Finance Wales and Student Finance Northern Ireland. So it will go live. We're not precious about it. We won't hold on to it and say we're not telling you when it is. But what I will tell you is that when it does go live, there is always a prescriptive hard deadline. And that deadline is generally the 24th or the 25th of May. Now, again, that hasn't been published yet. But what I would say, and to reiterate to parents, to students, for teachers and advisors all here today, it is so important that when the cycle goes live, students, parents, anybody supporting an application, that you complete that application in a very timely fashion. And the simple reason I say that is that recently, and I could be here all evening with my anecdotal stories of late applications and people facing hardship, and I can see the smiles by Colleen and Emma, and you know what I'm talking about. If you don't apply between the launch date and the May deadline, and you apply afterwards, you can simply consider it a late application. It's not like UCAS that you can apply after the 15th of January. And yes, it's a late application, but within a couple of weeks, you might receive an offer. What happens within our processing center is that between that deadline, we have to process between 1.5 and 1.8 million application forms for student finance. That is a logistical nightmare for our assessors. But when people apply around August and September, the priority isn't the applications, unfortunately, that have been coming in late. The priority is to make sure that the payments are ready to go for those students and parents who applied between February and May, and to make sure that that money is in the bank account when they start their higher education course. And unfortunately, up until last week, I've been dealing with a lot of cases where the universities and colleges welfare advisors have been phoning me and emailing me saying, we're in December and my student still hasn't received any student finance maintenance support. Very, very unfortunate to hear. But when we check when their applications were made, their applications weren't even made until the first week of October. So quite clearly, very late decisions to go into higher education. That's the first thing. And secondly, it's going to be late in terms of the payment. We can't always wave a magic wand, no matter how good I am and what relationship I have with my assessors. I try and rush those applications through where I can, I will. But what I will say is that between February and May, the Gov website, you don't pay for your student finance application form. It's a free resource. You don't need a confirmed place at college or university to apply for student finance. You just list down your preferred choice of institution. And if that changes between the deadline of May and when you actually start college or university, which is in late September, you just go onto your online portal account and you change the name of the institution that you are wishing to go to. So we pay the right tuition fee to that institution. It's as simple as that. And we've run focus groups in our head office around completing application forms. And as long as students have their national insurance number, their personal bank account details, and their passport details, because we need to verify UK identity, then it takes 15 minutes to complete a finance application form. That's it. 15 minutes of your life to complete your finance application form. And equally for parents, if you're supporting an application form, we need your national insurance number, your previous tax year household earnings through your P60 or your self-employment tax returns or any P45 documentations, and your details of any younger children still living with you that are financially dependent. And again, no more than 15-20 minutes for you to complete your application. So for the sake of maybe half an hour, 40 minutes tops, I urge you to complete that application when the cycle goes live between February and May. Sorry, a bit of a longer question and answer there, Giovanna, but I'm glad you asked that question.
There was actually a second bit to her question.
I do apologize. It's the age.
She wanted to know if there are any extra bursaries available for students, and including any for the allied healthcare courses.
Okay, so Student Loans Company itself doesn't provide bursaries or scholarships. That is directly from universities and colleges. So where students are eligible, i.e. they're the first in their family to go to university or they're low income backgrounds, they should be doing this research directly with the universities, speaking to the colleges and finding out exactly what additional scholarships and bursaries are available directly from the institutions that they are considering. And the universities and colleges are great at providing this information. It will be on their websites. Speak to their recruitment outreach WP teams, speak to organizations like Aspire Higher, Study Higher, who will also be able to liaise with you and support you with those questions and that additional research. With regards to the NHS, we now know that this year, given the year that we've had, the government announced the training grant, the new training grant of £5,000 for everybody wishing to study nursing, midwifery, allied health professional courses. So there is a £5,000 non-repayable training grant that's available directly from the NHS, not from the Student Loans Company. We get inundated with calls from people about, when do I get my NHS grant? We are not the NHS, we are the Student Loans Company. The NHS Business Service Authority, NHSBSA is the acronym. If you Google that, it will take you directly to the Student Services Support Department of the NHS, and they will be able to give you further information on all of the bursaries and scholarships and the extra support if you do study nursing, midwifery and allied health professional courses. If you do study these courses, I can tell you, because we've done a lot of support work for the NHS, that there is additional parental learning support. Originally £1,000, but now they've increased that by another £1,000, so £2,000 if you have children. Additional financial support of £1,000 if you study shortage subjects in the NHS, and that's things like learning disability nursing, mental health nursing, and some other allied health professional courses, again listed on the NHS website. And there is also additional funding, again in the form of, I think, about £1,000 a year, if you study a course in a region that is struggling to recruit within the NHS. And that yet hasn't been determined by the NHS what those geographical areas are. But you can see there the trend that the NHS is putting a lot, well, I should say the government has put a lot more money into the NHS to support students to re-enter into these NHS professions. That is on top of the maintenance loan support from us at the Student Loans Company and the tuition fee support from us, pay the tuition fees for all NHS courses. I hope that answers your question, Giovanna.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
I think Giovanna actually did post another question as well. So,
she gets the medal for the most questions asked.
So this is probably relates a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, actually, to do with EU students and sort of foreign nationals. So it's so there's a student who's arrived in the UK in January 2019. They would like to apply but defer their entry to 2022. So will they then be eligible for student finance, having been resident in the UK for 3 years by that time? Giovanna apparently rang UCAS and they asked her to speak to student finance. So
yeah, I think I might have to give UCAS a call and tell them that this referred you to the wrong organisation. I should have referred you to the Home Office. But I think I'll wear all caps tonight. So Giovanna, great question, and there's actually it's a two-part answer. Firstly, you ask, they arrived in 2019. So if they've arrived in 2019, they've been here just pretty much over a year. They're coming on to 2 years. Again, their parents, any family members would have had to go through the EU settlement scheme if they are EU. If they're from the rest of the world, that would be a different status that they would be applying for if they've received indefinite leave to remain, indefinite leave to enter. So if they arrived here as asylum seekers and been granted refugee status. So again, without knowing somebody's personal case, we can't comment. But generally speaking, for the EU settlement scheme, as I said, if they've arrived here and they're shy of 5 years, they must go through the EU settlement scheme. And that is effectively what UCAS should have told you, because this guidance is all over UCAS because we've provided it to them. So UCAS should have given you that information. I do apologize for that. I don't know why am I apologizing for UCAS. I don't work for UCAS. Okay. Okay, so that's the first thing. They have to apply through the EU settlement scheme and get their status determined. Under 5 years, 99.9% chance it's going to be the pre-settled status, which means they're entitled to tuition fee support, not maintenance loan. If they defer and choose not to go to university in 2021, but choose to go in 2022, this is where answering your question becomes a little bit more difficult, and I'll explain why. As I said, the policy has not yet been finalized by government and the Department for Education on what the absolute final regulations will look like for 2021 EU EEA starters. So at this moment in time, if we don't know what it looks like for 2021, 2022 starters, we cannot comment on what it would look like for 2022, 2023 starters, obviously. Obviously, yes, people are entitled to defer. Brilliant. Once we know more, and we will hopefully, knock on wood, fingers crossed, know more by January at the latest, I would imagine. I can't see government pushing it any further back. But equally, the students will still have a lot of time, even if it's in January, to do their research, speak to the Home Office, speak to UCAS, speak to the Student Finance England helpline, and get all of that information with regards to deferring and whether they would still be entitled. So two-part answer. Second part, absolutely can't answer definitively because we don't know what the final policy is. First part, yes, they have to apply through the EU settlement scheme still. A hand has gone up. The initials are BP. I'm not sure who that is. Let's have that question.
Oh, hi. Yeah, my question is, if somebody applies to student finance and they're off to uni and then they just decide they're not going to go, they don't bother enrolling, you know, they don't turn up the first week, do they owe any student finance whatsoever?
Absolutely, and I'm going to come looking for that person. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't know your name. I'm just joking. So absolutely not. Sorry?
It's not me.
Okay. Okay. So absolutely not. So let's just use that as a great example. So let's say somebody applies in February 2021, is absolutely determined to go to university, decides by September they've found an apprenticeship and decides that no, it's not for me, or has found employment. Absolutely fine. They don't need to do anything. We don't need to do anything because we don't actually release any payments until the student has registered at the institution. It's what's known as a COA, confirmation of attendance. So unless they have actually enrolled at their institution, we don't release the payment. They can phone us and say, hey, guess what? I've decided not to go to university. We can delete the application form for them. And if they decide in 2 or 3 years' time that that's when they wish to go to university, then by all means, they have to then do a new application form with the existing registration details that they have. They can't have more than one existing, what's known as a customer reference number. So once you create a student finance account, you're issued a 10-digit CRN, customer reference number. Do not lose that CRN. Please hold on to it. Take a screenshot. Don't lose your mobile phone. Write it down. put it safe somewhere, put it in a bank safe, whatever it might be. If you lose it, you'll have to go through a set of questions through our security line to determine that you are the person you are before we reissue your private details to you. And that's obvious because of fraudulent calls that can be made and people claiming to be people they're not. So absolutely not to worry. No, they don't owe anything because they wouldn't have been paid anything.
Thank you. That answers both questions, because they have been trying to call and haven't been able to get through, and I think they've been panicking a little bit. But I said, as far as I'm aware, they wouldn't, you know, receive
as long as they
any
haven't
charge.
started.
Yeah.
As long as they haven't started and they haven't met any what we call liability dates, then that's absolutely fine. No payments would have been released.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see we've had another question come through from Ellie in the chat. So she's asked, how long after enrolling at the university will the student need to wait for their first payment? And I guess this comes back to your application dates.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for reading that question out, Emma. Ellie, brilliant question. So let's assume you've applied on time between the February and the May deadline. You've received your NOE, Notification of Entitlement letter from Student Finance England, the brilliant blue and white letter. You can review everything on your online account as well. If you register at your college or university, let's say on the 28th of September, and you'll hopefully have a better freshers fare in 2021 than many people have had in 2020. Generally speaking, once you've enrolled, your registrar and your finance department at the institution electronically notify us of that enrollment, and it is within 5 working days that we release that payment into your bank account. Ellie, does that answer your question? I think it does.
It does, and I think, thank you very much. And I think that just highlights, she says yes, thank you. To make sure you apply on time, basically, because if you don't, that's when you get those delays. But
yeah, I think, I mean, what I will say, one of the worst cases I've ever had of delayed maintenance loan payment was in 2017. It was a university in the East Midlands that had contacted me saying that they had an NHS student starting their nursing course and in the September, and they'd contacted me around the February the following year, and no money had still been released for this student. And when I asked our assessment teams to look into the account on behalf of the university and the student, it turned out that the student hadn't actually applied for student finance until November. So it begged the question how they'd been allowed to start the course without any tuition fees in place at the university. So there's a lot of these issues and variables that have to be considered. It's great to start a course. It's great to be enthusiastic about starting a new life as a student at university, but forgetting the most basic processes like your student finance, getting your tuition fee in place, getting your maintenance loan in place, you can't overlook that, and I can't stress the importance of overlooking that. Now, fortunately, given that that student was demonstrating extreme hardship, I advocated on behalf of that student and went to our assessors, and we managed to fast track the application and get some maintenance loan out to the student. But it's a lesson there that needs to be adhered to, that the later you leave it, or even if you started university and you think someone else has done it on your behalf or it's out there in the ether, it doesn't work like that. It's your responsibility, if you're progressing to higher education, to complete your student finance application form, get your household income evidence submitted to us, get the evidence that we ask for via email through the online account once you've created it, to do all of that in a timely fashion, and you'll make sure that your maintenance and your tuition fee is ready for you when you start university. I think there were another couple of questions that popped up there.
Yeah, there's another question actually.
I should start charging.
Danny asked, is the maintenance loan paid monthly? Now, I think you referred to this initially. You might want to explain.
Sure. Thank you very much for your question, Danny. So once you receive your notification of entitlement, it will break down exactly what you're entitled to and a payment schedule. So there'll be dates on that schedule. So one payment is released once you've started your course and have registered at the institution, enrolled, and the college or university tells us. So one installment roughly early October, not monthly, then another payment in January after Christmas, and then another payment after Easter. So the payment we give you is split equally based on the full year's entitlement, and that's to help you budget for the roughly 12 weeks per term that you are at college or university. So maybe talking to people about budgeting skills as well, and maybe how far that money can stretch But a lot of students, as we know, work part-time as well. Unfortunately, that hasn't always been possible this year due to the pandemic. But hopefully, fingers crossed, things will be better in 2021.
I think we've got a hand up as well from Heather.
Okay.
Wanted to ask your question, Heather, as well.
Hi, Heather. You have to unmute yourself, Heather. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, brilliant. Hi, how are you?
Excellent. Hi, I'm fine, thank you. This is just a question with regards to paying back the student loan. After completing a university course, if the young person goes abroad, because they've said, you know, students have said to me that's what they're gonna, sometimes that's what they're gonna do. Is there any way of, you know, kind of tracking them down?
Yeah, I go overseas and I track them down personally. I go in my backpack and I travel the world looking for these students that we have all over the globe, and I get a love. No, I don't. Yes, you're absolutely right, and that is an excellent question. So basically, once a student graduates from university or college and does decide to go and live or work overseas, if they are relocating overseas for work purposes, they are required under the terms and conditions of their contract with us to complete an overseas form. Now, that overseas form identifies to us the length of time that they're likely to be abroad, what they're earning in the country that they've gone to live and work in, because we have a repayment threshold agreement with every country around the world. So the threshold agreement here in the UK is higher. So for instance, if somebody went to Europe and worked in Poland, let's just say, the threshold there is much lower than it is for here. So it's actually in their interest to tell us that they've gone overseas to work, because they might not be meeting the threshold repayment for that country that they're living in. And what they don't want to do is, by not telling us, being overseas, working, and not keeping in contact with us and updating their details, is us applying the actual repayment amount, which is higher for this country than it is for overseas. They can start to repay while they're working overseas through the tax system of the employer that they're working for there, or they can set up another way. It's a new way that we've started last year. It's a little bit like Western Union, as I like to describe it, but there's more information on our repayment social media portal. The company that we've agreed to work with, they set up an account and can repay based on their student's account the amount that they wish to repay above the threshold in that country. However, if they go overseas purely for traveling purposes, they need to notify us still. What we will ask for, and I say us, is our repayment team will say, that's fine, enjoy your travels, have a lovely holiday. They just need to provide us evidence of their bank account to show that there isn't a salary or wages being paid into that account while they're traveling. What a student does while they're abroad is down to them, but if they're not employed by a company or an organization while they're traveling, and they don't evidence that to us and they're just traveling, that's absolutely fine. They can travel. It's in their interest to notify us, basically.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think a couple of questions popped up.
I have, yeah. Giovanna's asked another question. So,
Giovanna, you definitely get the trophy this evening.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
It's good. So she says 2 of our students are furloughed at the moment. So will their student loan fees be suspended, or are they still expected to make payments? Both of them earn above the threshold for payments.
So these are students that have already graduated, am I assuming, Giovanna, is that correct?
Yes, they've graduated.
Right, okay. So what happens is because repayments are taken automatically through the PAYE of your employer, as soon as your income falls below the threshold, and the current threshold is 26,577, if their income has fallen below that, their repayments will automatically stop. If they feel that their repayments haven't stopped, they need to have a very quick conversation with their employer, because the repayments are made to the HMRC, not to Student Loans Company.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And another interesting question from Asim. So is there a Sharia compliant option for the student loan?
I saw that pop up. Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. At the moment, there is no what is referred to alternative finance product in place. The government held a a review back in 2014, and there is a parliamentary document available, which was the government's response on Sharia compliant finance. It was reviewed in 2014. I think it was reviewed again in 2017 and 18. There is, at this moment in time, I can't speak for the government, but as the student loans company, we have not been notified of any alternative finance product that is in place or in planning to come in place for, obviously, for Sharia compliant customers.
So it's an interesting question because I've not come across that before. But
I've come across it a lot over my 21 years of doing this. Yeah.
I don't know if there are any other questions. I don't know. I suppose this would be something to research then. So how do students, if they're interested in Sharia compliant finance, sort of finance university?
I mean, you're making a very, very good point, Emma, and I think we need to be, or especially I need to be a little bit careful because it's a discussion more of a social, political discussion. As far as the student loans company goes, the product that currently exists from the government is what is in place. Yeah. What I would advise or suggest, not necessarily advise, is suggest, and I had this question just a week and a half ago for another session I was doing, is speak to as many organizations, governing bodies as possible. Maybe speak to the British Council of the British Muslim Council and take their view on it as well as to whether the current product proves suitable for progressing to higher education or not. And remember, progressing to higher education and the transition into higher education is always a very personal one. It has to be an informed choice. It's not one that is forced upon anybody to undertake. It's one that one hopes that if you have thought about your social and economic mobility, or for whatever reason you wish to progress into higher education, that it is with full informing and knowledge and research that you've undertaken that decision. And I say that applies to student finance as well, whether it's Sharia compliant or non-Sharia compliant, even for anybody going through the current model. Is student finance for you? Is higher education for you? It has to be well informed and well thought out. But I agree with you. It's a discussion that no doubt does take place in corridors, but it's one I think takes place in corridors that are way above my wage power. And you know, if it's introduced, great. If it's not, you know, we'll wait and see when it does get introduced. And if it is introduced, it'll be great to see who takes responsibility for administering that particular product.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, it's not something that student finance offer at the moment, but I guess the best advice probably from the point of view of someone who works in HE is to look for, you know, what bursaries and scholarships, what do individual universities do, that might be able to help you. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else had any questions or anything else they wanted to ask.
I noticed Heather has her hand up, so I don't know if that was because you have a question, Heather.
Oh no, I don't. Sorry, I just didn't know my hand. Sorry.
Heather, you're just waving at me, aren't you?
Sorry, I thought I was being really good at spotting someone with a question, and I didn't mean to highlight. Okay. I've got someone else actually who's got a question.
Elise, I think that is.
Yeah, Elise.
Yeah.
Yes, hi. Yeah, hi there. I just wanted to ask, with the maintenance loan, I believe there used to be a minimum that was offered before it was means tested. Is that still the case?
Still the case, Elise. So it's what we class as non-means tested. So that is a percentage of the maximum, depending on the at-home rate, elsewhere rate, or London rate. So you're absolutely correct. So if a student applies and their parents don't provide household income or refuse to support that application, the student is guaranteed the non-means tested element. But obviously, once household income is provided and a sponsor's income details are sent to us, we then work out if there's any additional maintenance loan from the balance that's still a student is entitled to. Yeah. So the two rates still exist.
Okay. And is there like a 50% of what they're going to be earning, or is it?
You're referring to the time that it used to be a 60-40 split. I remember those years well. It's not. It's a very unusual figure, and I'd love to meet the Home Office Minister that sits there working all of this out. It's about a 48.6% to a 51.4% split now. Don't quote me on that, but
okay.
It's that way done now, unfortunately. So it's not an even, nowhere near an even split. Like I said, I'd love to meet the minister that works that one out.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we've got a couple of more questions. There's still a hand up. It's coming up under the initials of BP. I don't know if that name is somebody else's.
Sorry, I think that's me from earlier.
You're waving at me as well still, aren't you? That's what it is.
I'll try and take that off.
It's the putting up the hand and forgetting you've got your hand up. I've done that in many a meeting. That's. I don't know if anyone else had any other sort of questions or comments or anything, because this is an opportunity just to ask anything, no matter how sort of simple or basic it may seem. Just any questions you had about student finance that you just wanted to get answered, or anything you're curious about. Otherwise, I could ask a question, because I was curious about how is, in terms of, assessment and for the maintenance loan and sort of income assessment, is any of that changing in light of COVID, or sort of COVID relief and that kind of thing? Is any of that, I suppose that's probably still unknown. I just wondered if there was anything. No,
it's a very good question actually, Emma, because this year, as I said, it's been a very difficult year, and a very difficult year for families and those that are supporting their partners, or their young or their mature, who have gone off to university in 2020. So basically for this year, and every year it's still available, for this year it was quite unique. The current year income assessment form exists and still does exist. So it was more prevalent for this particular financial year. So where students had applied between the February and the May deadline for starting university or college in September of this year, and had provided their 18 and 19 tax year household income evidence, we would have made the assessment on their maintenance loan based on 18 and 19. Now we know what's taken place this year. A lot of parents have lost jobs, been made redundant, gone on to furlough, made to reduce hours into part-time. So there's been a huge impact on people's household income. Where that has happened, the current year income assessment form is available for parents to then download and complete. And what happens with that is if the joint household income has dropped by 15% or more due to, let's say, the pandemic, the parents complete that form with an estimate of what they are likely to earn for the full remaining year. Then at the end of the year, our assessors write to the parents and will say, can you now provide evidence of actually what you did earn? And we then adjust that based on any future maintenance loan that might be, that your son or daughter or yourself might be entitled to. That current year income assessment form will be in place next year as well. So you're absolutely right to ask that question. If next year, for students starting at university and the 19-20 academic year and 2020-21 year proves difficult and changes and personal circumstances change, my advice is very quickly get onto that current year income assessment form, complete it as best as you possibly can with the estimate for the remaining year, get it into our assessors as soon as possible, so that if your son or daughter or yourself are entitled to more or less, the assessors can make that adjustment and make sure that you're not missing out on anything. Great question, Emma. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, I've had questions like that come through. Actually, we have an online chat and have sort of conversations with teachers and things. Now, I've had a couple of people just in personal life ask me this because I work in HE and they think I know all of the answers. So it's interesting. No, I think as I said, it's a great question, and I think it's something that the key message there again is for students just to keep in touch with us. As soon as personal circumstances change or are impacted by something, get onto Student Finance England, speak to the helpline, tell them of that change, speak to the representative at your college or your university so they can put in place any COC, change of circumstances, documentation to us, highlighting exactly what that change is. And that's the key thing, is keeping in touch with us to ensure that you're not missing out on anything that you might be entitled to, or whether it's just a change of address, phone number, email address. It's important that students keep in touch with us. Brilliant. So we've got a couple more minutes, maybe time for one or two more questions, but I just wanted to remind people that we've put a link to a sort of a comment board called Padlet in the chat. So if you just wanted to leave us a quick comment to let us know, thank you very much, Charlotte, she's very quick on posting that. If you wanted to just let us know, what you thought, or even just a thank you, or any additional questions you had, sort of that you think of later, anything at all sort of about this session today, we'd love to read your comments, because we do use them when planning kind of our next events, and we're also going to send out sort of an evaluation form
through email as well, and we'll post that in the chat as well. But that takes maybe 5 minutes, so we'll post that out. And if 1 or 2 people could fill that out, that'd be really great, because we do read all of the feedback, and we appreciate the time you take to fill those in, because it does help us kind of plan and see what people are interested in, see what things people like, what you want to know more about, so we can kind of plan that for our next sessions. But yeah, we have about sort of 5-6 more minutes before we sign off, so I don't know if anyone had any sort of final questions. I can see Colleen's unmuted herself, so I'm anticipating.
Sorry, I was just going to add that yes, we do appreciate any who are willing to fill out the evaluation, because it is extremely helpful for us to improve on these sessions. And before someone asks their next question, I just want to remind people that we have these are monthly, and our next session is the 7th of January, and it's going to be on UCAS update. So we have a representative from UCAS that we're very excited that they were willing to join us. So by all means, sign up for those, and they can be found on our Aspire Higher website on the Teacher CPD page. We'll have details of those.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Gio, for leaving a comment in the that was very nice of you.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of notes, I've got a document with some typed up questions and answers, of things that sort of some of the key points that Ahmar covered, which we'll send out to everyone. And then we also have sort of a more policy-based sort of document for the teachers and advisors as well that attended, which should be useful for you. So, and we'll also be doing the recording of this, will be edited and then made sort of available to everyone. So if you did ever want to watch back or review anything, you'll be able to watch it on our websites as well. That's Study Higher and Aspire Higher websites. Yeah, so I'll make sure you get all that information sent out to you. So I think we had quite a few good questions, some unusual ones. I don't know if anyone's got any final last burning questions they wanted to ask, or anything we didn't cover. Oh, Elise, yes, please go.
Yeah, just thought you were going to go and get a cup of tea, and then someone puts their hand up. I just remembered we had a situation this year where the university, it's a university course, but it's delivered at the college, because it's collaboration between the uni and the college. So I sort of advised the student that they need to make sure they put Bedford College, because that's where the tuition fee needs to go. However, the tuition fee still went to the university, and then we had to do the COA form to get the student moved over. What's the best thing to put on the application form for future reference?
Okay, so it's a great question, Elise. And first and foremost, what I will say is we have a department within, or we have a team within the department that I work in, which is Partner Services, which is the Higher Education Partner Services Account Managers team. Generally speaking, when you have a course set up like that, which is taught at a college institution but is partnered with a university, it is all determined by how that course is set up on the course management service system within SLC. And that then determines how it is triggered on the finance application form. So when a student applies for a course and it is taught at a college, if it's been set up correctly with the correct course code and campus code and institution code, the tuition fee in theory should be going to the institution where the course is actually being taught and studied at, not to the actual awarding institution, what it sounds like in this case. So what I would say is that whoever's responsible at your institution or at any other institution who has courses set up like this is to ensure that the way the courses are set up with our CMS team at SLC are correct through the course code, the institution code, and to make sure that any tuition fees that need to be paid go to the right institution and not to the university that is actually awarding the actual course itself. So it's a slightly different process, but there is a team in place who can help you with that, and they're part of the HEP, Higher Education Partners Account Management team, who assist and support all colleges and universities with regards to how courses are actually set up and to ensure that they are set up in the right way. So you can get those details from our SLC website as well. So if there is any discrepancy or questions around that moving forward, please do feel free to get in touch with us.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And
I just noticed actually we did have a question from Sophia, which I don't think we covered. She said, sort of sorry they joined late, and they said, is there any information? So this goes back to the EU and Brexit situation again. So on European students living in the UK and how the current exit will affect them. So yeah, sorry Sophia that you joined a bit late and missed some of that, but we did cover that. But I don't know, Ahmar, if you want to give a very brief.
I've actually answered it. No, I will. I'll give another very high-level brief, and I'll charge for my time now. But you'll notice in Emma, in the document that I prepared for you with the questions and answers, I've covered that off. But Sophia, thank you very much for asking that question. And very quickly, I'll say what I said earlier on. The most important thing here is to remember that the EU settlement scheme is nothing to do with student finance. It's a Home Office immigration status scheme that you must follow if you are an EU or European Economic Area resident in the UK. You have to be living in the UK before the 31st of December 2020, which is the end of the transition period. You have to have applied for your status, depending on how long you've been living in the UK. If you've been here 5 years or more, you should in theory get your settled status. If it's less than 5 years, you will get from the Home Office what's known as the pre-settled status. Now, depending on what status you are awarded, you then apply for student finance next year as an EU EEA citizen who is permanently resident in the UK. That will then determine exactly your student finance entitlement. Whether you're settled, you'll get full support. If it's pre-settled, you'll get tuition fee support only. But I've answered that question in a little bit more detail on the Q&A document that will be sent out by Emma. But the most important thing for you is not, am I entitled to student finance? Should I then apply for my EU settlement scheme? It's the other way around, Sophia. If you've been living here and residing here and are choosing to stay here after the transition period, which is the 31st of December 2020, you have to have gone through the EU settlement scheme, and any family members as well have lawful residency of remaining in this country. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
You've had that question a couple of times, but that is one of the questions, as you said, that was included in the document that you've sent me. So we'll make sure we send that out. So sort of all the commonly asked questions, or the questions that we felt Ahmar felt he could answer, have been written in that document. So we'll send that out just after this. So thank you very much to everyone for attending. Thank you very much to Ahmar for your time this afternoon. It's been really interesting, and actually you've answered a lot of questions that I didn't know the answer to as well. So it's been really educational for me.
A pleasure.
So yes, thank you very much everyone for attending. If you do have any questions that sort of crop up afterwards, please do either email us or you can contact us on our website through our live chat, and we're happy to sort of answer them. And likewise, we'll send out sort of Ahmar's answer to some of the questions you sent through as well this afternoon. So hopefully that kind of answers everything. And please do remember to fill in the survey that we send out, or do leave us a comment on our Padlet as well. But have a good evening, everyone.
I wish everybody a very lovely Christmas break. Take care of yourselves all. Stay safe. Thank you very much for the evening. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.